Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn the very basic concept of Java, which is classes and its objects. Before we get into the technicalities, let's try to understand what is a class or an object in a real world. Now, one thing you all must be familiar without doubt is an application form. Let's assume a scenario that you are going to take an admission in a college and you approached the college and they would give you an application form. This application form will contain information like your first name, last name, mobile, email ID, which college or which school you had previously attended, what is your last percentage, what was your main subject, what is your address maybe, and what are your hobbies, your aspirations, or whatever data the college is interested in collecting from you. Now, for the college to collect such information from all the candidates who approach them, they might have printed hundreds and thousands of such applications. Okay, but this application form is nothing but a format. It is just a template which contains no data. So long as these application forms are sitting in the college office, they have no meaning. It is when a student approaches the college and then starts filling the information inside the application form that the application form starts making sense. Okay, now application form. Let's assume three friends approached the college for admissions and started filling the application form. Now, when they fill the application form, that is when the application form has some data, and that is when that application form has a meaning. For example, Anne approaches, fills the application form with Anne's details, first name, last name, her personal phone number, her email ID, the college she attended last, and her percentage. Similarly, John fills his application form with his name, his email, his phone number, and his last percentage and the college he attended. And so is the case with Rachel. Now, if the college keeps these copies of these three application forms, they have meaning because they have data in it. So what was the difference between the blank application form and the same application form after these students filled the data in it? The difference is, in the first case, the application form was blank. It was just a format. It was just a guidance to these applicants that as a college, I need these fields to be filled by you. But when the students take these application forms and they fill in data, it has become very personal to that particular person's information. Now let's relate this to the Java world. So in the Java world, this application form, which was blank, which was just a template or a format, is what is called as class. So class is nothing but a template or a format, or in the definition way, we call it a blueprint. A blueprint saying that what kind of data this class needs. And when the users start using these classes and starts filling in respective information to the fields defined by the class, it becomes what is called as objects and instances. So it's object or instance, and you can call it interchangeably. So as it says instance, it means this is an instance of Anne, this is an instance of John, and this is an instance of Rachel. So class is only a template or a blueprint or a format, and when you fill in values to the class's variables or fields, that is when it becomes an object. So this is what is conceptually what is a class and what is an object. Now let's try to define a class and see how we can create its objects. So for that, let's start by creating a Java class. Sticking to our example, let me call this class as application form. Okay, suppose the college I belong to, I want to define an application form where I want to gather the students or the applicants' first name. I want to gather their last name. I want to also gather their email ID, and I want their mobile number. And as we said, I'm interested to know previous college or previous institution, let's call it, make it generic. It can be a school or a college. So let's say previous institution, and I will say float percentage. Okay, so suppose I just want these bare minimum information from the students, right? Now, so inside a class, these variables that defines the characteristic of the class and which will store data, they are called class variables, or they can called fields of the class. And in order to access these fields from another class, we need to have something called getters and setters. Now, what is a getter and setter? It can be actually with IntelliJ, we can automatically generate these getters and setters without having to type them. So let's right click and do generate. And here it will say, do you want to generate, what do you want to generate? You want to generate a constructor, a getter, a setter, both getters and setters, equals, hash codes, toStrings, and many other options. Now let's stick to the topic today and let's try to generate the getters and setters. So I want both getter and setter. Now when I click on getter and setter, it will ask me for which all variables. So you see these are the variables we defined. Now it is asking you which of these fields do you want to create a getter and setter. Suppose I am choosing for first name and last name only. Okay, so I select first name and last name and click OK. See, you see automatically IntelliJ has created the getters and setters. Now what is a getter and setter? In simple terms, it says get the first name and set the first name. That means if I want to access what is the value stored in the variable or the field name first name, I will say get first name. Get me the value of first name. And if I want to store a value into the field first name, I will say set first name and I will pass the value that I want to assign to the first name variable. And here you'll see first name is equal to the value I passed. So this was the getter and the setter for the field first name. Similarly, you will see the getter and setter for the second field, that is the last name. Okay, now since I had selected only getters and setters for first name and last name, you can see IntelliJ generated the getters and setters for those two variables only. Whereas you can see for the other variables, email, mobile, previous institution and percentage, there is no getters and setters. Now let's see how can we use these getters and setters. Okay, so we have a very basic class defined now, which has got all these fields and it has got two sets of getters and setters. Now this is nothing but a class, which is nothing but an application form template. At this moment, this is just a format. It is just a blueprint. It's just a template. It has got no value in it. Now let's see how can we define an object for this class, or what an object means. So as you know, Java always runs inside a main. So I'm going to another class, a main class with a main method in it. So the syntax for defining an object of a class is the class name. In this case, it is application form. I can give any name to my application form. So I will say form 1, for example. And then I want to create a new instance of this class or new object of this class. So as I'm saying, new is the syntax. I'll say new. And of which class do I want to create a new instance of? I want to create a new object for application form. So I will just say application form. So this actually is the object of the class application form. This new application form syntax has done nothing. Again, there is no value in this object. All it has done by doing new application form is it has now created a memory, reserved a memory for this object. The memory size is enough to store all the variables that is defined in this class. But at the moment, there is no information. It is only a memory reserved. Now, how can I store information? To store the information, I want to store the information into the object called form1. So I will do form1 dot. Now I want to store the first name. Okay, I will store it as Anne, for example. Now I want to store the last name also for this object. So I'll say setter. I will select last name and I will store a last name, suppose Brooks. Now I have some data inside my object form1. Okay, let's see whether we had successfully stored it or not. So for that, let us print the data. Now, for printing, what do I need? I need to get the information from this object. So for which we had defined the getters. So I will say first name, and I will try to get the first name from the object. So I will say form1 dot. So I will choose first name because I'm trying to print the first name. Similarly, I will try to print the last name also. So I will do form1 dot get last name. Right? Now let's try to run this class. So I will say right click and run the main class. And here you can see it has printed first name is Anne and the last name is Brooks, which is nothing but the values I had set using the setters. Now, if you see, this application form is incomplete because Anne Brooks, the applicant, has only given me the first name and last name and has not given me the other information like email, mobile, previous institution and percentage. And as an institution, I really want to contact the candidate back. So I need at least the email or the phone number. And also I want to shortlist the candidates based on their previous merits. So I want to know which institution they had previously attended and what is their percentage. So that means it is required that we need getters and setters for all the fields. So long as I don't have getters and setters defined, and another class from outside is not able to provide data for the other fields. So that makes us understand why the setter methods and getter methods are important. Let's come back to our application form class and try to generate the getters and setters for other variables. So now if you see, I have a getter and setter for email, getter and setter for mobile, getter and setter for previous institution, and getter and setters for last percentage. So similarly, I can do set mobile number and give some phone number. Similarly, I will fill in the other variables, say set email. So I will just say info@email.com and then I will say form1.set. Now what I have not previous institution, I will say IIT for example, and then I say form1.set my last percentage. I had around 95%. Now if I come back here, I can print the remaining stuffs as well. So I can say mobile and I will say form1.get mobile. Okay, I can say email and I'll say form1.get email and so on. Okay, I can print everything. So now if I run this class, you can see along with the first name and last name, now I also have the mobile and email printed for that particular object. So this is how we can fill information into an object, thus converting a class which was just a blank template into a particular person's data repository. Not a repository, but a data stored application from. Okay. Now here what you have seen is this is all about Anne's information, right? Now if we go back to our previous example, we had three applicants come in. So we had Anne, we had John, and we had Rachel. So that means how do we store, say, John's information? For that, we will have to now create another application instance. So application form, this is another instance form 2. Again, I will say equal to new because I want to store John's information in a separate memory location because John's application form is different. So I will say new application form. Now this time I want to fill form 2, not form 1 because form 1 was Anne's object and we have already filled all the information we need. So this time I want to fill John's information. So I will use form 2 dot set first name. This is John. And then I will say form 2 dot set last name. This is Doe. And same way form 2 dot set mobile. I will say 3434 or whatever. And then I will say form 2 dot set previous institution. I will say KBV something, I don't care. And form 2 dot set percentage is percentage is 74. Okay, and let's now try to print John's information. Okay, so this time I have to print using form 2. So because I want the values inside the object form 2, so I will replace all this with form 2, form 2, form 2. Also, to make it very readable, let's say something like form 1 values, okay, just for us to understand. Okay, and then I will also print here form 2 values. Right, now let's print and I'll say run, and here you can see that we have form 1 value which was related to Anne, and we have form 2 values which are related to John. So now I am sure how you know very well how to create the third object for our third candidate, which was Rachel, right? So this is one way of setting information using setters and getters. But if you see here, we had to repeat so many setters for each of those applicants, which makes the code very lengthy. Imagine if we had Rachel's instance also, that would mean so many lines again we will have for Rachel, right? So in order to make the code more concise, more readable, there is another way of doing it, which is called a constructor. Okay, for that simply what you have to do, same IntelliJ helps you to generate it automatically. Come here, do generate, and there is something called constructor. I will select constructor. Again, here if you see, this is the constructor. Okay, now this is nothing but the exact class name. Okay, it has to be public so that other classes can access it. And then if you see, it is taking all the fields in this class as the argument, right? So you can see first name, last name, email, mobile, previous institution, and percentage. All the fields here, it is taking as argument inside this application form method. Now this is just like a getter and setter methods. If you see a setter method, it was taking only one specific argument because the method name says set first name. So it was only taking the first name because the intention of this method is only to assign value to first name. Okay, so constructor is a method which can be used to assign values to more than one fields. That is why it is taking so many arguments, right? And then in one shot, It is doing the work that we did in main to set the object values individually. It is doing it in one shot inside the method. So it is setting the first name of this class with the first name I have passed as an argument, the last name of the class with the last name value I have passed, and so on. Okay, so it is called a constructor. Why constructor? It is only trying to construct or build the object of this class. Okay, now I will show you a surprise. You were already familiar with a constructor. So if you come here, you see this new application form. What is it? It is the class name with an empty brackets. This was also a constructor of the class, but this is called a default constructor. Now if I come back to my main class where I was trying to create these objects, this time I don't have to do all this. Okay, all I need to do here is I can do application form1 is equal to new application form, and see, this time it is showing me an error because it says expected 6 arguments but found 0. Okay, so this time I have overridden the default constructor with a parameterized constructor, and this constructor wants me to pass these 6 values. So whatever value I passed as setters, now I will pass it inside this constructor. So I'll say Anne Brooks. The phone number was 1234567, I guess, 778 to be precise, to what we said previously. Then we stored info at email.com, and then I should pass the college, IIT, and then it is 95. I'm wondering if the order is correct. So let's see what is the order here. So it is first name, last name, email, and mobile number. So yes, we have to pass it in the right order. So first name, last name, email, and the mobile number. So let me swap it. Let me put the email first and the phone number later. Phone number is an integer, so I don't need it. Then coming back after email, it is the institution name and then the percentage. So it is the institution name and then the percentage. So I used the constructor and got my object ready. See what we did in like 7 lines of code. We have now accomplished the same behavior in just 1 line of code, and thus making our code more readable and more concise. So the preferred way of setting information to assign or constructing an object is making use of its constructor. Now you might ask me, then why do we need setters? Setter is a special case, like when later on during the processing there is a special situation. Now there was a scenario where the student came back and said, oh, sorry, I had a typo in my mobile number, can you please fix it? Then maybe I would come and say form1.set mobile, and I will change the number to 123456. Sorry, I put an extra 7 in the number, so I will fix it with only 17. This time where I want to update a particular information of the class, I would prefer using a setter rather than reconstructing the whole object. Why? Because that would be a waste of memory. Because every time you do new application form, it is going to create a copy of this object or create a new memory location and unnecessarily duplicate the information somewhere else. But when I'm doing a setter on the form1 object, it is only going to that particular memory location and update the dedicated field that I want to change. So that's it. That is what a class is, and that is what an object is. Class is a template or it is a blueprint, and when you fill in data into that template, it becomes an object. This you can relate to anything in your surroundings. You take a house, or you take a school, you take a car. So everything has got a template, right? So house, number of rooms, number of bathrooms, number of floors, what is the square feet? All this fields that defines a house becomes the template. But when you fill the data, my house has 4 bedrooms, 2 toilets, 1 story, and 19 square meter, whatever, I don't know. So when you give all this information is when that template of the house becomes my house. And my house is the object, right? I hope you understand what classes and objects are. We'll meet soon in our next session. Until then, take care and keep learning.